So, how do you draft sunset clauses in California legislation? Sunset dates or sunset clauses are pretty common throughout legislation across the country. And the purpose, obviously, is to repeal a statute or a law on a specified date. As a result, unless the legislature enacts another bill to either extend or eliminate that sunset date, the law will expire or sunset on the specified date in the statute. And sunset dates often extend from 1 to 3 years to as long as a decade or more. These sunset or expiration clauses, they're generally used to allow the legislative branch to revisit a statute to check on how the law has been implemented by the executive branch or how it's been used in the private or public sector. Sunset clauses are used primarily by the states. Congress uses them very sparingly. One of the few recent examples at the federal level is the Federal Patriot Act as an example of the federal government using a sunset clause provision. There are other instances, of course, when the legislature may want a statute to be temporary in application. For example, legislation that may be viewed as an experiment, the need to try something for the first time, for example. The legislature may want to check on how the law has worked for a few years before making it permanent. And sometimes controversial legislation may be established with a sunset date as a possible compromise. In other words, the legislature may choose to give a contested bill an opportunity to prove itself, if you will. A sunset clause may also be appropriate when a law is necessary to address just a temporary situation or fulfill a short term need, such as a state of emergency, maybe a temporary disruption in the economy. So the legislature may impose a sunset date for a number of reasons, but primarily to ensure that a review is triggered before a statute is going to be extended or made permanent. Now, in California, we usually see a sunset or repeal clause in one of these two forms. The first example is this section shall remain in effect only until December 1, 2020, and as of that date is repealed. The other more extensive language is this section shall become inoperative on July 1, 2020, and as of January 1, 2021 is repealed, unless a later enacted statute that becomes operative on or before January 1, 2021 deletes or extends the dates on which it becomes inoperative and is repealed. Now, a sunset date is always placed at the end of the code section or chapter that's being added. And as a result, the bill drafter needs to ensure that the sunset clause correctly refers to either section or chapter or subdivision. And there are basically two methods to create a sunset date. Make the provision inoperative or repeal it. What's the difference? Making a provision of law inoperative means that it remains on the books, but no longer has any force or effect. On the other hand, repealing a provision means that provision of law is actually taken off the books entirely. So it no longer appears in the corporation's code, the government code, the evidence code, etc. So those are the two methods, inoperative or repeal.